Good morning. My name is Carla Smith Brown. I am the daughter of the late Mrs. Gwendolyn Lolita Harrison Smith. The hearts and minds of our family and friends are truly overwhelmed today with gratitude and thankful recognition for the audacity of the owners, creators, builders, project managers, contractors, staff, and all those responsible for erecting this magnificent facility. I use the word audacity because it takes boldness and courage to name a building after a little-known African American woman in this era of unrest, cynicism, bias, bigotry, violence, and hatred. In a world in which the focus and the outcry of many is Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and all lives matter. In spite of all this, and in the midst of all this, you have chosen to build and name this establishment the Gwendolyn. My mother was born August 9, 1925. She was the second of two daughters, born to Mrs. Myra Wilhelmina Smith Harrison, a former school teacher born in Knoxville, Tennessee, who was the daughter of Oliver Smith, a shoemaker, and Laura Baxter Smith, a college student and former original member of the Fifth Jubilee Singers. And her father, the late Dr. Joseph Plummer Harrison, son of Mr. Benjamin Harrison and Mrs. Ellen Nichols Harrison, sharecroppers of Pitt County here in North Carolina. I believe my mother inherited a lot of tenacity and perseverance from my grandfather, Dr. Harrison. For he said that he was from a large family and no one cared if he wanted to go and further his education. But my grandfather had such a drive and passion and a desire to be educated that he waited tables during the day and picked cotton at night by lantern light to pay for his college education. He and my grandmother met in college, later married, and moved to Kinston, North Carolina. There he began his private practice as one of only two Black doctors during the Great Depression. They were not rich by any stretch of the imagination. Many times I'm told they were paid with meat, vegetables, and whatever people had. And sometimes he never got paid, but his pay was doing what he loved to do. My mother was an active child whose mother kept her busy making lace or tatting, crocheting, and reading books. She showed signs of great promise and intelligence at an early age. Her mother taught her lessons during the summer. She excelled quickly and was able to skip some grades. She graduated from Atkins Senior High School in Kinston, North Carolina, about 78 miles from the other side of Raleigh, at age 13 as valedictorian. My grandfather thought she was too young to attend college, so she went to Palmer Memorial Institute, located between Greensboro and Burlington, North Carolina, for 1 year. She entered Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, at age 14, and graduated at age 18 as valedictorian. She received a bachelor's degree in history, taught for 1 year at Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta. She said she did not enjoy it due to the fact that students had problems accepting her as a teacher instead of a peer. So she left and enrolled at the University of California at Berkeley, where she received her master's degree in Spanish. She moved back to North Carolina and became a professor of Spanish and history at Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. During this time, in the early 1950s, she decided she wanted to receive her doctorate degree. So she applied to the University of North Carolina here in Chapel Hill. She was accepted on the basis of her excellent grades. When she arrived, however, she was met with great disappointment because the school had somehow failed to recognize that she was a Negro. She was immediately rejected. When asked about this experience, my mother said, and I quote, "I went there in good faith, and I was turned back around, and I was very upset about it," unquote. In the words of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and I quote, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but rather where he stands in times of challenge and controversy," unquote. In my mother's time of rejection, discomfort, extreme disappointments, and controversy, she could have chosen to simply walk away, return home dejected and defeated. She chose rather to take a stand. And with the help of her father and the NAACP, she filed a federal lawsuit against the school. After much heated controversy, the school did decide to let her attend, and the lawsuit was later dropped. Sometime after this, a gentleman by the name of Mr. John Charles Smith, a former World War II veteran, was working in Charlotte, North Carolina, attending barber school. I'm told that he spotted Gwendolyn on a busy Charlotte street on her way to piano lessons. Mr. Smith liked what he saw, pushed his watch up his shirt sleeve, walked across the street, and asked Gwendolyn for the time. They were later married April 5th, 1953, and the rest, as they say, is history. She moved to Bedford City, North Carolina, about 45 minutes on the other side of Charlotte, and began their family. I am the oldest child, the only daughter. I have 3 brothers. Joseph, who is a mechanical engineer for Boeing in Washington, D.C. I have a brother here, Dwight, and my brother Adrian is here with his family. And we have many family and friends and neighbors from Bedford City here today. Will y'all please raise your hands so they can see? Immediately after my mother passed away at the age of 91, in 2017, I was contacted by the president of the Graduate and Professional Student Federation, Mr. Brian Cousins, at UNC Chapel Hill. I was informed of their plan to vote on a resolution to create an award to be given to deserving students and members of the community in my mother's name. My family and I were so excited, and I asked if I could attend and was given the go-ahead signal. One of my sons, one of my grandsons, and I came in 2017 and watched as this resolution was voted in, and the first graduate student received that award in my mother's name. I came to Chapel Hill from Gastonia, North Carolina 4 years ago because I sensed the urgency and the importance of that honorable event. Today, I am here along with many of our family and friends, neighbors, and members of the community who knew my mother. I think I can safely say on their behalf and mine that it is with a great sense of urgency, importance, and fervor that we are here today in awe of this moment in time. Thankful, grateful, excited, overwhelmed, proud. Words are insufficient to express the depth of the sincere appreciation in our hearts for this distinct privilege of prestige and honor as you dedicate this building today. May it always stand as a testimony to who she was and what she stood for. In my conclusion, my mother planted some things in the lives of my family and in her community. She loved to plant flowers, and she loved the garden. I want to share with you some of the products of the garden she planted in our lives. I will call them a garden of peas. Somebody say a garden of peas.
A garden of peas.
Some of you may not like peas, but these peas are essential as a part of who she was and what she stood for. Taste these, if you will. My mother stood for purpose. She achieved this through a life of integrity, kindness, and love for all people of every race, every creed, every color and background. May this building stand for purpose. Next in the garden of our lives, she planted persistence. She did this with determination, resolve, willpower. May this edifice in her name stand for persistence. My mother planted and stood for progress, advancement, forward movement, destiny. Every single day she lived, she kept reading, kept writing. She never stopped loving to learn. She was a lifelong student of knowledge until the day she closed her eyes in death at the age of 91. May this structure represent her well in progress. My mother planted in the garden of life and stood for peace. She was a woman of calm spirit, serenity, soft-spoken, mannerly, well-behaved, with a quiet spirit. May this place be a place of peace. Last of all, my mother stood for and planted prayer. She was a woman who prayed in faith, believing God for the blessings of opportunity, not only for herself, but for our family, her friends. She lived life praying every single day, and she lived with faith in expectation of reward after her time on earth was over. And she died in faith with expectation for what God would give her, a reward that would transcend any that we mere mortal beings could ever give. May this structure, which stands in her name, be a property where all those who stand on these grounds feel the results of her prayers and the prayers and aspirations of all those who sacrificed and struggled and gave of themselves, that this beautiful structure could be available to all those who dare to dream. My only regret is that my mother is not physically present to see the lasting contribution and impact that her life has had on modern academia and history. However, I believe that she is smiling from beyond the balconies of heaven, happy, content, excited, and appreciative, just as grateful as all of us who are present here today. May this spectacular building, named in her honor, forever stand as a monument to the lasting legacy and impression her life has left on us and her family and friends, and to all who are here of the name of Gwendolyn in the future and in time to come. May God bless you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Carla, thank you. I wanted to take a minute to let that sink in. Those beautiful words. Thank you so much. And I do like tea. Dwight Smith, welcome. And you have a hard act to follow with your sister.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Success. A brilliant bauble beckons us. There, in the distance, shining like a star. With winged feet, we would pursue his dazzling array to distant heights beyond the far horizon's arc. But if we seek the warmth of his bright glow, and on our way, pass by the weary souls who, trotting barefoot over the rocky road, have fallen in need of a helping hand and youth like ours to lift them up and help them on their way. Though we should reach the prize, its golden gleam would crumble into dust before our eyes. Oh, the time so short, we fear that should we for a moment pause, even though to help a brother to his feet, we would not reach the heights for which we strive. But somewhere, from the clouds above, there comes a voice, in tones as clear and loud as though the sounding of a bell. If you would have your name flung to the skies, engrave it first upon the hearts of men. If you would have your name flung to the skies, engrave it first upon the hearts of men. Y'all clap. Oh, you don't have to clap. Thank you. I did that on purpose. Now, I didn't write that. Y'all know who wrote that. My mother wrote that. When she was a teenager. I couldn't write like that when I was a teenager. Matter of fact, I can't write like that now. But they say she was, I'm trying to edit my notes because I'm trying not to repeat a lot of things that were said already. But they say she was a genius. She was. When we were growing up, she started her family. She decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and a wife. So we knew her as mom, and she was my father's wife. So we weren't around when she was doing all her academic stuff. But we would hear people over the years talk about her. People that knew her, her peers, and they would say, oh, your mother was a genius when she was in college. Oh, your mother's brilliant. Oh, she has a great mind. But she would never say it. And whenever I would ask her, growing up, I would say, Mom, was you a genius when you was in school? And she always gave the same answer. She smiled and she said, oh, I don't know. They say I was. Always her answer. She didn't have any diplomas on the wall. She didn't have any certifications on the wall. She started school at the age of 5. She did the first grade at home. She went to public school for the second grade, did the third grade public school, skipped the fourth grade, did the fifth grade, skipped the sixth grade. Now, when I was in third grade, I had the chicken pox, and I skipped 2 weeks. I went back to school. It was like I was in a foreign land. I don't know how you can skip a year and skip another year. But anyway, she graduated Victorian High School, college, went to Spelman, and growing up, she said the family always loved and cherished exchanging cards and gifts and for Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's. And so I think, that bug was planted, and she did that her whole life. She wrote and read probably every day her whole life, probably to the day she died. She loved sending out cards and letters. If you were a friend of hers or neighbor, she would send you a Christmas card, a Easter card, or if you were sick, she would send you a card. If you were in prison, you'll get a letter from her. She did that her whole life. And like my sister said, my father was a doctor, and there's a street named for him in Kinston, North Carolina, called J.P. Harrison Boulevard because of his service and commitment to the community. They didn't always have a lot of money, but my mother said they always had something to eat because people paid them with food because a lot of the patients were farmers and sharecroppers and stuff like that. I want to thank Mr. Clay Grubbs. I heard from my niece and from my sister that they're naming the building after Mama. And I didn't know anything else, and I kept waiting to hear from somebody, and I never heard from anybody. So I Googled it, and I found Grubb Properties, and I saw the CEO Clay Grubb, and I went into the directory and I dialed a number and I got his voicemail. I said, hello, Mr. Grubb. My name is Dwight Smith. You probably don't know I exist, but my mother's Gwendolyn Smith, and I'm calling in reference to the Gwendolyn, and I want to get more information. And he called me back the next day. He said, you're right. I didn't know you existed, but I'm glad to hear from you. So I was in touch with him and Miss Emily Etheridge, and all the people involved. I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank the special guests who are here, our neighbors who were here from Bessemer City, next door neighbors, Doug Kemp and Gene Floyd, our neighbors, Henry Gilmore and his mother, Miss Charlene Williams. I know Michael Stokes, next door neighbor, knew my mother. We have a neighbor who grew up right behind us, knew my mother. Our mothers were friends, and she actually graduated from UNC Chapel Hill. Dr. Greta Harper is here. What else? My mother went to UNC, and when they turned her away and she had the lawsuit, and they dropped the lawsuit, and they accepted her, and she said I had my own private suite. She stayed in Kenyon Hall. She had her own private suite and her own private bath. And she actually did go back the following semester. And once again, she said I had my own private suite and my own private bath. And then the following year, she got married and started a family and started having children, and she didn't return. I want to finish up. I want to share some bits of a letter that my mother wrote. And the letter ends with a poem that she wrote to her very first grandchild, Felicia, who's sitting right here. And I'm going to have my friend from New York, Miss Perry Gaffney. She's an actress, writer, author, performer extraordinaire. Perry's going to come up and share bits of the letter and the poem. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dwight. I first met Gwendolyn Harrison Smith about 20 years ago in New York City when I was designated to be the tour guide for her and her family while they were visiting. And I tried to take them everywhere that one day. And Miss Gwendolyn sat up front with me, and I asked her if she'd ever been to New York. And she said, yes. And I said, oh, where did you used to like to go? And she named quite a few places, including the Savoy. Now, for those of you who do not know, the Savoy was a legendary Harlem club, and it was known worldwide for the big band battles that happened between Count Basie and Duke Ellington and Benny Goodman and Louis Armstrong and others, and also for the Lindy Hop contest. I was shocked. I said, you went to the Savoy? Little tiny lady. She said, yes. I said, did you go more than once? And she said, oh, yes. I said, you mean to tell me you used to be a hoochie coochie girl? And she laughed with almost like a shocked, frozen smile. And then she answered, no. And I said, well, if you went one time because you were curious, that's one thing. But I always heard that if you kept going back, you were one of them hoochie coochie girls. And she, no, I wasn't one of them. And I just fell in love with this tiny little, beautiful, brilliant lady with a spirit and words that still shine. A letter to Dwight. Dear young bloom, your flowers arrived and they are beautiful. Thank you so much for such a lovely and thoughtful gift. There are carnations, snapdragons, baby's breath, asters, and others in shades of pink and white. I was invited to present my poem, The Sage, at the World of Poetry Convention in September. And my poem, To Felicia with Love, won an honorable mention in a poetry contest. To Felicia with Love. Of course, child, black is beautiful. I never heard those words when I was growing up, or thought to quaff the dregs from life's uncertain cup. But now you stand at the threshold of a newly opened door. In blood and sweat was forged its key by those who've gone on before. And though you may be tempted to seek the tinsel prize, forego a lesser destiny and reach up toward the skies, nor fail to stop to lend a hand to your sister or your brother, where you will find your greatest joy is simply serving others. So hone your mind and tune your hearts to life's gay, grim melody. And as you resolutely climb, whisper a prayer for me. God bless and keep you forever. Gwendolyn Harrison Smith.
Thank you all again for being here. At this point, our time, I'd love to do the ribbon cutting, and I'll invite Dwight and Ms. Brown to come up, Mayor Heminger, if you'd like to come up and join us. Kevin, wherever Kevin went to, we'd love to do that.
I have a brother here that hadn't said anything. Let him help cut the ribbon. I've already talked. My brother's here. Adrian. Where are you? I'm right there. He's right there. I'm right there.
There's plenty of ribbon. Thank y'all for being here. Thanks again for coming and during this heat. We have some gift bags for anyone who would like one. Please help yourself. We have a step and see. We'd love to get a picture of y'all on this momentum occasion, and I'm sure there's some refreshments left. Please help yourselves to those as well. Thank you all again.
Thank you.